The issue of Palestine isn't just a modern thing. It's been a tug of war for like 3,000 years. So about 3,300 years ago, Allah told Moses to free the Israelites from the Pharaoh's grip in Egypt. After a lot of struggles, Pharaoh finally let them go. And Moses led them to the border of Palestine and told them to take control of the city. But the Israelites were hesitant, saying Moses and his Lord should fight while they'd stay back. Because of this, Allah made them wander in the desert for 40 years as a punishment. During this time, Moses received the Torah, and in the book of Genesis, it clearly says that Palestine was promised to Abraham's descendants. So the Jews believe that Jerusalem and Palestine are theirs, all thanks to a verse in the Torah. They claim this because they're descended from Isaac, Abraham's son. But hold on, the Torah also says the land is for all of Abraham's descendants, not just Isaac's crew. Abraham had two sons, Isaac and Ishmael. Isaac is the big guy for the Israelites, while Ishmael is the forefather of the Arabs. So, technically, the Arabs, being Ishmael's descendants, can stake a claim to Palestine too. After some time, the Israelites, led by Joshua, finally make it to Palestine after wandering around for 40 years. They conquer it, but then lose control pretty quickly and can't get it back for 300 years. Then came King David, the hero who recaptures Jerusalem, and his son Solomon, who goes all out and builds the first temple there. The Jews then rule Palestine and Jerusalem for a solid 400 years. But then bam! The Babylonian Empire, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, comes in, wrecks Jerusalem, kills a bunch of Jews, and demolishes Solomon's temple. Total chaos. After the Babylonians took over Jerusalem, they dragged the surviving Jews off to Babylon as captives. The Jews were stuck there for 70 years. Then, out of nowhere, Cyrus the Great of Persia, also known as Zulkarnain, shows up, conquers Babylon, and in a wild turn of events, lets the Jews go back to Palestine. Not only that, but he also bankrolls the rebuilding of Solomon's temple. The Jews are back in charge for another 400 years until the Roman Empire crushes everything. The Romans attack, kick the Jews out, and take over Palestine for the next 600 years. The Romans destroy the Second Temple, and it's never rebuilt again. Tough times for the Jews, for sure. So the Romans were chilling in Palestine and Jerusalem for a good 600 years until they made a colossal blunder. They decided to mess with the fast-rising Islamic Empire. The Islamic Caliphate was on a roll, smashing through both the Roman and Persian empires. Led by Caliph Umar, the Muslims made it to Jerusalem's doorstep. The city's governor, Sophronius, said he'd surrender, but only if Caliph Umar showed up in person. So Umar rolls into town, not in flashy armor, but in humble clothes, leading a camel while his servant rides it. The people of Jerusalem were stunned. They were expecting a fierce conqueror, not a down-to-earth guy. Caliph Umar took Jerusalem without shedding a drop of blood and promised religious freedom for everyone. He even allowed the Jews back into the city, where they had been banned for ages. This was the first time Jerusalem was under the control of the descendants of Ishmael, the Muslims. For nearly 350 years, Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived together peacefully. But then, boom, the Crusaders from Europe stormed in, capturing the city and committing horrific atrocities. slaughtering thousands of Muslims and Jews. They even turned the Al-Aqsa Mosque into their palace. The Jews took refuge in synagogues, which the Crusaders set on fire, killing women and children. But hang on, after 90 years of Crusader chaos, the legendary Muslim leader Sultan Salahuddin Ayyubi rallied an army from all over the Muslim world and took back Jerusalem. And get this, instead of seeking revenge, Salahuddin showed incredible mercy. He pardoned the Christians, who couldn't believe his kindness. He allowed all religions to practice freely and restored the Al-Aqsa Mosque to its original purpose as a place of worship. For the next 800 years, Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived together in Jerusalem without a hitch. But then, about 100 years ago, during World War I, the Ottoman Empire, which had been ruling Jerusalem, fell apart thanks to the British and the Arabs. This collapse led to Palestine slipping out of Muslim hands. The British had already made a secret deal with the Jews to establish a Jewish state if they could take control of Palestine. The Jews, who had become super influential and wealthy in Europe, saw a golden opportunity to establish their own state in Palestine. They started migrating there, buying land from Muslims at sky-high prices. The British were all in on this thanks to the Balfour Declaration, hoping to lock in Jewish support and financial backing during the World Wars. After World War II and the horrific persecution of Jews by Hitler, even more Jews flocked to Palestine, cranking up the tension. The UN proposed splitting Palestine into 3 parts, one for the Jews, one for the Palestinians, and Jerusalem to be governed by the UN. The Arabs were having none of it and attacked Israel the day after it declared independence. Despite being the new kid on the block, Israel, with international support, defeated the Arab armies and expanded its territory, displacing 700,000 Arabs. Over time, the Jewish population in Palestine ballooned while the Arab population shrank. In 1967, another war broke out due to a bunch of misunderstandings, and once again, Israel trounced the combined forces of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, expanding its territory threefold. This defeat fired up the Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamic movements who argued that the wars were lost by nationalist rulers, not true Muslims. Hamas, influenced by the Muslim Brotherhood, emerged from this ideology. Today, Israel controls all the territories of Palestine, including the West Bank and Gaza, and no one has been able to take these areas back from Israel. The reason for this shift was the Jews' significant strength in Europe across various fields: business, science, medicine, banking, making them the most powerful and wealthy community in Europe. Securing Jewish support was crucial for the British. For the past 1,800 years, the Jews had no state of their own, prompting some Jews to start the Zionist movement, which believed that Jews should have their own country. They chose Palestine and began working towards this goal from all angles. The Jews even tried to strike a deal with the Ottoman Caliph, Sultan Abdul Hamid, but he wasn't having it. This made them realize that the Ottoman Empire had to go for their dream to come true. When World War I ended and Palestine shifted from Ottoman to British control, Jews from all over the world began migrating to Palestine under this secret plan. They started buying land from Palestinian Muslims, often paying double or triple the price since they had plenty of money to burn. The British Empire backed the creation of a Jewish state through the Balfour Declaration, aiming to gain Jewish support and financial backing during the World Wars. Especially after World War II, and Hitler's horrific persecution of Jews, more Jews gathered in Palestine, leading to increased conflicts. The UN then proposed dividing Palestine into 3 parts, one for Palestinians, one for Israel, and Jerusalem to be governed by the UN, ensuring freedom for all religions. The Arab nations were fiercely against this plan and attacked Israel the day after it declared independence. Egypt, Jordan, and Syria jointly invaded Israel. But surprisingly, the Arabs lost to this brand new country. This defeat allowed Israel to control 40% of the territory originally allocated to Palestinians by the UN, including half of Jerusalem. Israel wasn't in this fight solo. They had the entire world's backing, including heavyweights like Russia and the US. After they took control, they booted out 700,000 Arabs from Palestine, steadily increasing the Jewish population and shrinking the Arab presence. With this win, Israel got stronger, and more Jews from around the globe flocked there. But the West Bank and Gaza were still out of Israel's grasp. Then, about 60 years ago, in 1967, another war kicked off thanks to some major misunderstandings. Egypt, Jordan, and Syria teamed up against Israel again. But in just 6 days, Israel whooped all 3 countries and tripled its size. It was a shocker, like seeing a world champion like Khabib Nurmagomedov losing to an amateur fighter. After getting beaten twice by Israel, the Arab populations were fed up with their nationalist rulers. This frustration led to the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood, inspired by Pakistani scholar Maulana Maududi's ideas. From this movement, Hamas emerged, influenced by the Muslim Brotherhood. They claimed the wars were lost because of leaders who were only Muslims in name, pushing for a shift towards Islamic unity. Despite all these changes, Israel still holds on to the West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem, and no one has managed to take these territories back.